that face took about 2 hours. To get into the outfit was about 45 minutes. But planning and designing that whole thing took 6 months.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Third Spacing, where we talk about important issues at the peripheries of clinical medicine. Today I have with me the most amazing Victoria Wondersnatch.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you for having me, Jia Ting.
Thank you for joining us. Yeah, so Victoria, would you like to tell our viewers a little bit more about yourself first?
Okay, well, my name is Victoria Wondersnatch. I'm a drag queen here in Singapore. I perform at this show called the Drag Qabaret. We do like musical theatre, parodies and stuff. And it's something I'm very passionate about.
And how do you actually get started in doing this?
With the explosion of things like RuPaul's Drag Race and stuff like that, everyone was dabbling in drag a little bit. So that's what I did. Before the pandemic, I performed for a few friends, like birthday parties and anniversaries and stuff like that. And secretly I was like in the toilet, in the bathroom, getting ready, trying new techniques and everything. In the end, accumulated so much makeup, I decided to just go full force with it. It's almost like I was radicalized by YouTube makeup tutorials.
And then, since starting this a few years ago, and I see you've created a YouTube channel, you're doing more shows in Singapore. How has the drag scene in Singapore actually evolved over the time?
Well, the drag scene in Singapore, of course, it all started off with the trans community in Bugis Street and everything, where they were, doing female impersonation shows and stuff like that. But now, of course, it's evolved into many different shows, especially after the pandemic. I would actually call this time that we're living in right now the golden age of drag, because we're getting new drag queens almost every other week.
Oh,
yeah, and there's so many drag shows in Singapore with a variety of flavors. So you can go and see lip sync performances, dance heavy performances, a little bit more risque stuff, and then you've got musical theatre stuff like the stuff I do. Yeah.
And then, so I just want to ask, since it's the golden age of drag, have you actually faced any challenges trying to set this up, trying to progress drag in Singapore?
I actually think Singapore is a lot more progressive than a lot of people give it credit for. Okay, the audiences have been amazing. They've been very open to different forms of drag and different forms of LGBT entertainment in Singapore. The government itself has, of course, slowly moved towards acceptance with the repeal of 377A last year. So a lot of us feel a lot safer, a lot more comfortable expressing ourselves. I think the main hurdles I would think is in Singapore it's really expensive to do anything you want. So venues are expensive, drinks are expensive. So to actually make it make sense, it's not easy. Okay, especially if you want to get your art out there, it's a bit of an investment.
Then, do you have any plans in particular going forward with this?
Well, right now I'm just having a great time with my friends, just doing our silly shows. We love doing musical theatre stuff, which is not usually something that is quite mainstream in Singapore, so that's something I hope to grow. Okay, for musical theatre especially, we like to sing songs and we like to change the words, make it a bit more parodies or LGBT-friendly parodies, okay, and that's usually quite fun, so I'd like to do a lot more of that. One day maybe have an actual theatrical production, okay, based on maybe some of the songs we've done before, or compiling maybe a greatest hits kind of thing. Right. I also quite passionate about things like public health and public education. So in my day job, I do sciencey stuff and medical stuff. So I sometimes try to use my drag to promote stuff like that as well. Yeah.
Actually, on that topic, we also understand that you are a dermatologist and also a clinician-scientist outside of your
in my free time.
Yeah,
in my free time.
Yeah. So we'd like to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So the last 20 years of my life, I've been doing clinical medicine, and of course I went off to do a PhD, and I did and it was basically a really sciencey topic. Okay, I basically study hair, and I study and for my PhD I studied the control of the hair cycle. Okay, and that's something that I'm also very interested about. Of course, now I'm in a lot of very fake hair, but this excites me, because I find hair such an interesting topic. Okay, and we were talking earlier that hair is something that is it's considered cosmetic by most people, but in the end, it's such a big part of our lives. Okay, we express ourselves through our hair. We learn about each other's cultures through our hair. Okay, and hair itself is such an amazing organ, thinking about it science-wise or medically. Okay, it's basically the stuff that your skin extrudes from the surface without fail for like 100 years, right? And it's an amazing a combination of stem cell control and a microenvironment of multiple stem cell populations that actually produce the hair. So I find all these things just so interesting, and that's something that I've dedicated my career to. Yeah.
And something that we have actually talked about, and I also understand, is that your knowledge in dermatology and knowledge in hair actually also affects the way that you do drag. Would you like to share a little bit more about that?
Yes, so I did, during the pandemic, come up with this series on my YouTube channel called Dermatology and Drag, because at the time I was watching a lot of YouTube, and I see a lot of these makeup channels. They would marry makeup with something that they were expert in, right? So, for example, there was this YouTuber called Bailey Sarian who does makeup and murder. She would talk about true crime, and that did really well for her. And other channels would do, you know, makeup and, let's say, some historical thing or something like that. And for me, since my expertise was dermatology, I thought, and no one else was doing it, I thought, why don't we do, like, you know, dermatology in drag? So I would pick a topic in dermatology and give a kind of a medical student lecture on it while getting into makeup and doing a makeup look inspired by the condition. So I thought that was really clever, and, you know, but of course that doesn't get all the views. Okay, maybe I get too technical with it, so it really goes over the head, or maybe it's a bit too much jargon for the usual viewer of YouTube. So that's something that I'm still trying to work on.
I've actually seen one of the videos,
Yeah.
and you actually were quoting papers and you were showing abstracts.
Yeah, well, that's how I was trained. So that's how I always have to cite my sources, and I always have to.
And something that I know that you're also particularly interested in, and you mentioned just now, is how you actually use drag for advocacy. So would you like to share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I think when I was doing drag and I was doing it more and more, I just felt it was very me-centric. Especially during the pandemic, I would do a makeup look, film a video, and then take it all off. So I wasn't interacting with the community. I wasn't doing anything outside of that. And I felt that was a bit of a waste. So I thought, how could I value add my drag, or how can I actually convert this to something that would have a greater good? So I started doing shows with the aim of getting my friends to donate to certain charities. Okay, and so one of the charities that I actually started with, Action for AIDS, is this subsidiary, is this small part of AFA called the Fund for the Arts. And around that time, I was very passionate about getting more queer representation, LGBT representation in the media. So the Fund for the Arts was started to provide resources for artists to produce queer-centric content.
And how has that come along so far?
We've done quite well. So in our first 2 shows that we did before the pandemic, we actually raised over $100,000. Yeah. And during the pandemic, we actually started dispersing those funds. So we had a grant call at the end of 2019, I think, to give out that money to young filmmakers to make film about the stigma and discrimination in the gay community or people living with HIV. So in the end, 2 films were made, and those are making the rounds of film festivals around the world right now. And most recently, we had some leftover money in the fund after that grant call. Last year, I heard that the web series People Like Us, I don't know whether you heard about that. It's a web series done by AFA, directed by Leon Chio. They had 2 seasons, and they were trying to raise money for the 3rd. So I decided to hold another fundraiser at the end of last year, a Christmas show, to top up the funds.
I see. That's amazing. And also, with medical professionals such as yourself, how do you think we can actually contribute more to pushing for more advocacy in both the workspace and also outside of work?
Well, that's a huge question. You might want to be a bit more specific with that, right? Are you talking about societal issues, or are you talking about for your patient? Okay, so as a clinician, those are 2 things that you need to think about. So the stuff I do with the Fund for the Arts, that's very much on a societal level of advocacy, right? But every individual patient is different. So you have to be able to fight for your patients' access to medications, your patients' access to health and stuff like that. So those are things that I'm also always on my mind. And ever since I started drag, that's something that I think has come very clear to me, especially being more in tune with the LGBT community, in tune with the level of discrimination you get when maybe people perceive you a certain way for doing drag, or for doing something that's out of the norm. We have a lot of patients who have gender dysphoria issues, especially in the hair clinic. Okay, so these are patients that sometimes feel quite underserved in certain sectors of healthcare in Singapore. So I think it's quite important for doctors to be aware of these issues and to be able to get these patients to be more comfortable accessing health.
And then for those of us out there, who are looking to do a little bit more, to try and learn a little bit more about topics that we care about, or like about how we can improve patient care, is there anything that you recommend that we do?
Well, you can go to my YouTube channel. I do have a little bit of a series if you click on the playlist on LGBT stuff. So I do try to talk about, I have a few videos about the transgender community in Singapore, which I've done a bit of research myself to try to put those together. I had a video about asexuality. I wouldn't say I'm the be all end all authority on any of these things, but I do link some resources in the description as well for if you want to learn more. There are many other groups in Singapore that talk about these things groups like Uga Chaga, the Tea Project. I would really go to their websites and really have a look at them and maybe even attend one of the meetings or maybe speak to a counsellor there if anyone wants to have more, a better idea about what it's like living in any of these patient groups in Singapore.
And then for our viewers at home, would you like to just plug your YouTube channel for us?
Oh yeah, you can just search Victoria Wondersnatch. I don't think anyone else has that name yet.
We also need the link in the description.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. You also mentioned about your work in the gender-affirming dermatology, right? About how hair actually plays such an integral part to our gender identity. So, we'd like to talk a little bit more about how you actually use hair to help your patients through this.
Yeah, so when you talk about gender-affirming healthcare, gender-affirming dermatology, it's not just for trans people, right? So the way that you wear your hair, the way that you react when you start losing your hair, that's all hugely affected by the way society has told us what our hair means to us. Okay, so gender-affirming dermatology is not just for trans people, it's for both trans, cis, or non-binary people as well. It's basically a human rights issue. Okay, it's not just a cosmetic issue. The way that you feel after you get a good haircut, or the way that you feel when you put on a wig that is not your hair, but this completely transforms the way that I carry myself, right? So I think that hair plays such a huge role, not just on our self-image, but also for psychologically as well, and also the way that we integrate ourselves or the way that we present ourselves to society. Okay, so I think that's why, as a hair specialist, that is gender-affirming dermatology is something that I practice every day. Okay, and I think that we should be able to get that access to everyone, no matter what their gender identity is.
And do you think that there's something more that people can do to try to advance this field?
I think just getting the word out there that we are thinking about this, and that patients do not have to feel scared to bring this up.
Right.
Okay, some people feel ashamed that they are so worried about losing their hair. They say, "Oh my God, this is nothing." This is like, a lot. In fact, a lot of patients come to us and they talk about everything, and then the hair is always the last thing. It's like, "Oh, by the way, I'm losing my hair." But when you talk to them, it's another whole half an hour when that's probably actually the thing that they came to see us for. But they didn't really dare to admit that it was that, right? Because society has told us that it's not important. This is cosmetic. Okay, but I think that's a mindset thing that we want to change. But the hair is one of the first things that you see when you see a person, right? And we make so much assumptions on people on the way that they keep their hair. So I don't know whether you heard about it. In America, there's this thing called the Crown Act. Have you heard about that? So for African Americans who have very natural hair, it can get quite hard to control. So a lot of them wear it in things like braids or big afros and stuff like that. And people have gotten fired for that.
Oh, wow.
People have lost their jobs or not been hired because of the way they wear their hair. So in a lot of states in America, they've passed this law called the Crown Act, which actually bars people from discriminating against a person's natural hair. So I think that's something very important. In Singapore, we don't really get that as much, but you can imagine if someone, for example, decides to do a mohawk or something, right? Or something that signifies a bit of a counterculture style. Okay, that you can imagine can cause some issues trying to get a job in, let's say, customer service or something. I mean, if you're talking about medical school, when I was doing my PhD, I had a really good friend who was African American, and she had to straighten her hair every 2 weeks
That's crazy.
because she didn't want to attend her rotations or her clinical rotations with her own natural hair, because she felt that she would get discriminated against.
Right.
And that cost her $200 every 2 weeks.
That's so
Yeah.
much money.
Yeah, it's
so
a lot of
expensive.
money,
Yeah.
and it's and we don't understand that,
Right.
right? We can never have her experience. So I think when talking about people's experience with their hair and stuff like that, these are things that hopefully we can have a bit more empathy for.
Actually, something that I was very interested in is also how doing dermatology has actually affected the way that you do your drag makeups, and and the science behind the drag makeup. Would you like to share a little bit more about it?
Yeah, so I think the way that I approach anything in life, I've always taken it like, all the way. If I'm interested in something, I hardly ever do things like half-heartedly. I want to make sure that I'm the best at that thing. So that's how I approached dermatology residency training. That's how I approached going to do my PhD, and that's also how I approach doing drag. I think for drag, being a scientist and being a clinician really helped me understand a lot of the ingredients, for example, in makeup, okay, and the steps that makeup requires, okay, and how to improve my makeup every single time. Of course, it's also worked the other way around, because putting on makeup so often has really informed me about what a lot of my patients go through, which I think a lot of other dermatologists cannot say.
Yeah.
So sometimes I do have patients who come to me and we discuss their makeup routine, and they are like, oh, wow, this doctor knows a lot more than he should about primers and foundations and stuff like that. Yeah, and actually with wigs also, I have been able to counsel some of my patients on wigs for patients with alopecia areata, or for hair loss that has gone beyond medical treatment. I've been able to talk to them about wigs, where to get wigs, how to care for wigs, how to style wigs. So it's been a really good back and forth. I mean, back to your question about the science of drag makeup. Yeah, I mean, I treat everything like a bit of an experiment. So I'm not afraid to make mistakes. Some days are bad makeup days, and you learn from that. Each time you put in makeup, it's an experiment. Every time you use a new product, it's an experiment. Some things don't mix, okay? You'll be surprised to find out about how sometimes a concealer and a foundation don't work together very well. Okay, and yeah, so that's the way that science kind of creeps into my drag.
Yes. So coming to the end of the interview, is there any parting words that you'd like to leave for our viewers here?
Thank you again for having me on this series. I think you guys are doing an amazing job. I've listened to some of your podcasts, and I really like the way that you speak to clinicians, scientists, and researchers that span a huge range of topics. Okay, and I think in Singapore, or anywhere in the world especially, we need to remember that I think our diversity of experiences and opinions and life experiences is something that really helps us make our specialty or our community very vibrant. Okay, so I know there might be a lot of people who see this and say, oh, this drag queen is a doctor, that's really disgusting or really inappropriate. I would like to challenge those people to think about the things, your own passions. Is there something that you have bottled up, or you have put aside for your career, or put aside for your partner, or something like that? And if you were given the full reign to do that and express yourself, what would it be?
So thank you so much for joining us today on this podcast, Victoria. And so for the rest of our viewers, please check out Victoria Wondersnatch's socials, both on YouTube and also on Instagram and TikTok. And also check out her upcoming shows at the Qabaret, and also it will be all his socials in the link in the description below. Yeah, and then for the rest of you, also please like, comment, subscribe, and share this with all your friends. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye.